on it, and it has changed several times, and so we're on our last revision, and we don't want to give you something until it's finalized, so that's why it's still in the draft form. And so what we're going to do is just talk through the slides, and we're just going to give you the why and the what we're doing and how. And then I think Pam already sent out a calendar invite for Wednesday for 12:30. So I'm not quite certain if your calendars are free at 12:30, but that's another time we're going to come together, and then that's what we're going to break apart into our 3 different teams. So by Wednesday, you will have a final, if nothing changes, because we still have some things to do once you guys leave today. So our team consisted of, and just please stand up and just wave your hand, was Ebony Cross Shields, Paula Harris, Charity Magruder, who else is there? Simone McQuaid, Ann Dillon, Judith Russ, Elita Kelly. Okay, so those were the 4 members of our group who helped to create what you're going to see today. And so we're going to just quickly go through the beginning slides again, but we will not have any involvement in that. As David has stated, that will be with mostly the associates. So the associates will go through the first 12 slides. You can scroll down to those. Sharon.
You said the first 12 slides?
Yes. Yes, if I'm correct. My notes, it's the first 12 slides. And we estimated that it would be about 15 minutes. Each session is 2 hours long, but we want to leave at least, we said about around 20 minutes at the end, so that the principals can collaborate and work together, because they will be looking at their own individual data a lot throughout all the sessions. And not only their own individual data, but how they're going to plan, implement, and monitor what they need to once they get back to the schools.
Can I have a question?
Yes.
So I heard you say the first 12. The context for the conversation that the associates and the deputies were over with, is that the first 12 slides? Or are they going to speak from something totally different, and the first 12 slides are a part of the presentation? I just want to be clear.
It's the context.
Okay.
So the first 12 slides before you get to part 1, if I'm not mistaken.
The rest of the presentation team begins the presentation on slide 13.
13,
okay.
Exactly.
When part 1 officially begins.
Exactly.
So they're like the prerequisites, they're setting the stage.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
A comment was made earlier with respect to the data, that if you're a new principal, you don't have valid data. Is there a problem with giving the new principal the valid data from last year that wasn't connected to them individually?
I'm not certain, but we can put that question out and ask.
Because it would be really relevant for that new principal to gauge the tenor of the culture in the building based on that data.
Yeah.
And if we don't have valid data, can we replace that with like some recent climate survey data or something?
Sounds good. Donnie, you're taking notes for us? Thank you, Chris.
I'm sorry.
And within that first 12 slides, if you could just look at that, and again, this will be majority associates, on SLI resource book. The principals will have an SLI resource book that they will use throughout the entire time, where they will be doing some different tasks around the sessions. And so this book is coming together as we speak. And again, the elementary team will work on their pages today, because they would like to have it all done by today, so that they can begin to print things. And so when we get more, it will all be in a note section underneath what the things will speak about. So right now, when you go through this, it's probably empty or highlighted, because we are working on it, and particularly Dr. Green, because you're one of the ones that's doing the first 12 slides, we'll have notes. So just like David had his talking points, we're going to copy those over and put it inside the bottom of the notes for you as well. Okay? So we go to part 1, and please stop if you have any questions and clarifications. So part 1 is setting the stage and examining leader and teacher practices. And I'm actually going to just turn it over to my partner now, who will actually talk about part 1, Ebony Frost.
Okay. All right. So in part 1, first we're going to start off, slide down. We're going to start off with the norms. You know, part of being data wise is we always begin with setting the stage. And so All the sessions will have the same norms, and these are the standard data-wise norms. Won't spend a whole lot of time on this, just reminding them what our norms, our working norms for the day are. And then there'll be a quote. I'm not 100%. Is this definitely going to be the quote?
Yes, because by high school you said so.
Okay. So we have decided that all schools will use the same quote to kind of set the stage, and it's from John F. Kennedy. And it will just be an opportunity for them to look and reflect on the quote as it relates to their leadership. There won't be long discussion about it or anything like that. And then one of the things that was important was for us to link their everyday practice and what we were doing specifically doing SLI with their leadership practices. And so the two most relevant are Standard 4 and Standard 6. And so this is just a moment for us to highlight those two standards for the principals so that they can understand the frame or the lens that we're using for this particular presentation in SLI. So we'll be focused on Standards 4 and Standard 6 during our time with them. So this slide is still a work in progress. The purpose of this stand is to help teachers to understand, principals, excuse me, to understand the core components of the ValEd data as they relate to the leadership practices, and then for them to understand the actual scores that correlate with those particular practices and components from our school system ValEd data. So this slide is going to change slightly. And so you'll see the updated slide, but just so that you know the thinking behind this, this was a slide that was provided for us that we're going to use to set that tone around why ValEd data is important.
And just to kind of go those,
can you go back?
we talked about trying to make sure we're using the right terminology for that data set. So core component is one piece of terminology, and then underneath it is the leadership practices. So the core components are high standards for students, rigorous curriculum, quality instruction, culture of learning, connections to external, and performance accountability. So maybe I can try to make sure that they stand out a little bit more. But underneath each one of those core components, I've embedded all the leadership standards, so you can see that relation. The other thing is the key process. That's the other terminology, is the bottom right-hand corner are key processes. So for every key process, or for every core component, there's leadership practices under each key process.
This one only affects monitoring.
Correct.
So monitoring and planning are circle, and we are looking at planning as well. So that was one thing we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, it just gets.
Chris had a question.
Can we have this as a handout? It's not readable on the micro version. It's not readable from here to the screen. There's just too much text on that slide to actually make.
And that was one of our concerns about the slide, and so that's why I said the slide is still, we're still giving some feedback on how to tweak
I
that
can't
slide.
read it, but it's probably really good information, so that's why I think it should be.
So Donna just added in the notes that can we provide that as a handout?
Yeah, maybe we'll make it in something.
Or it might, maybe it should go in the booklet.
Worksheet book, the resource book that we're creating.
Talk to me.
Yes, we were just saying that worksheet book that we're creating for the principals, we can put it inside there.
As opposed to a loose handout, it would be a part of the SLI work booklet. Would that work?
As long as it's something that they can.
A tangible copy,
All
okay.
that text, it should be something they can hold close.
Okay.
It's a full page.
All right. So here's where we will have, you'll have an expert in your room from OEPE that will actually talk about the ValEd data and the importance of ValEd data, how we will use it moving forward, how it's previously been used to grow practice and help building leaders to reflect on their practice. And so here's a little background about what ValEd is. The survey itself, to the next slide. The instrument, so the 72 items that are defined, who actually takes the survey, so it's taken by the principal, the teachers, as well as the supervisor, and that's the 360-degree portion of it. And then the levels of the rates, how it rates principals' effectiveness. And so this piece will really help them to see the correlation between val ed data and set the stage for us then moving into the principal data, to the teacher data, to the student data. So then they'll have an opportunity to take a district data gallery walk. So in every room, there will be posters around the room, and they will have val ed data up that is reflective of our most recent systemic val ed data. During that time, they'll have a notice and wondering capture sheet, and they'll actually capture information or capture their thinking, their wonderings about the data that they see. Then they'll come back to their specific tables, and they'll have conversations about their notices and wonderings. And then they'll chart a sentence to create their own story. So what was the story they saw from the data that they saw around the room? So when they took this data gallery walk and reviewed the val ed data, what were the things that stuck out to them? What was the story that was told from this val ed data? And then each table will share the data out loud. So then they'll actually be able to see, and this is going to be provided to us today. This was one that was provided from the company, but we're actually going to have our specific data from Prince George's County from the 2014-2015 school year that will give us the breakdown of the data that was received from the principal, the supervisor, and the teachers. And so these are samples of what will actually be up around the room. You won't click through each one of those slides. Yes, Jeff?
That slide just moved away from, is that going to be just all the data collected for principals or all administrators?
So it's going to be all administrators. Unfortunately, they could not break it out, principal and assistant principal yet. So for this time, it will be all administrators grouped together. Yes.
For this new score, is there a scale, is there something you can come up with to kind of put that into context? For example, if it's on a Likert scale from 1 to 5, 3 should be the average, which should be favorable.
So go to the next slide.
What we may also want to look at is the scale scores for val ed. So like a 3 is not proficient val ed. It's pretty high as well. It's like 3.6 or something.
It's a 3.6. So this right here.
There's something wrong, we had something kind of
Put it in context. Okay. So we have this to explain the performance motivations, but we can do that as well. I've got that down.
Oh, the same scores below basic.
It should say less than
3 points. Yes. So we need to ask them to update that too. Okay, so this is the Prince George's County. I'm sorry, Chris, you want to bring it up? Or you already just have it?
The scale, the proficiency, it's not really a scale score. Proficiency band scores are more important than like reading in the middle. Because when principals first took the val ed, the perception was that if I give myself 3s, I'm proficient. And if I give myself 4s, I'm creative and proficient. And in reality, a lot of principals rated themselves for 4 range and ended up basic with some indicators for val ed or some components first year. So that's why I would say that's more important, just as a reminder to principals, especially given that we're explaining the evaluation tool to them as part of this opening of schools.
Can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
Can we put performance band slide before?
Yes, they just made that
Oh, okay.
modification.
Yeah, that makes it clear.
And these are the actual charts that will be up.
I hear what you're saying.
No, she actually just made that. Some of them have been moved around for whatever reason, so Trina was just about to make that modification. So these are all the different slides that they'll see that will be in poster format up around the room.
So Ebony, it will be the 2014-15 data
Yes.
that will be up?
So
not the
these are like placeholder slides, and we needed them to give us the most updated information, which we're supposed to receive today. But it'll be the same format, but for 2014, 2015. So then they'll also see FFT data, because we wanted the principals to understand the correlation between the principal data and the FFT data. So what does our data say about principal practice, teacher practice, and then how, in session 2, how that relates to student achievement. And so they'll also see FFT data. There will be a focus on 1F, 3B, and 3D, because those were the most needy areas in FFT. And so what we want them to see is a story that arises from the adult data, and then in day 2, they'll actually be able to make a connection between what the adult data is saying and what the student data is saying.
Are we making an effort to connect this to the essential question that they saw on day 1?
Yes.
And the central question is throughout the whole 6-hour session. So at the end, when it's time to talk and reflect, we'll go back to that again.
So what do we do if the principal asks questions data-wise process? I thought the essential questions arise after the data story.
So say that one more time, Chris.
We're giving them the essential question before we develop the data story. Isn't that efforts?
So,
Go ahead.
So when you develop a data story, you actually create a priority question based on your data. The central question is the guiding question for framing for the leadership.
So it's their thinking prompt throughout.
So we're telling them it's not a priority.
No, this is not a priority question at all.
It looks a lot like a priority question.
So most schools are used to using an
So-
essential question to drive instruction and sometimes workshops, and so the essential question is supposed to frame their learning.
That's clear.
Okay.
Just tell us not priority.
So then you have this slide where now that they've looked at the systemic data, they're actually going to have a moment to look at their data. So all the principals will have a copy of their FFT data, correct? They're going to provide FFT data as well as their own data from Val Ed. So then they'll compare their notice and wonderings from the systemic data and then their school level data, because it's like, okay, so what now what? So you share with me the systemic data, but that may or may not be a reflection of the practice or the data set from my particular school. So now they have an opportunity to look at their data, and then they're going to come up with their wows, their ahas, or their about the Val Ed data and FFT data from their school. So then they'll have an opportunity for table talk, and they'll talk about what that story means with their colleagues, their elbow partners at their table. And so they'll talk about their findings, their comparisons between systemic data and their individual school data. Then they'll have time to share out, so it's kind of like a think, pair, share. First they worked on their own, then they share with their table mates, pair with their table mates, and then they're going to share out with the entire group. And then this slide will not look like this, but these guiding questions will actually be in their SLI booklet. Dr. Davis was very specific about wanting principals to have time to think and plan, and not time, a whole bunch of time with us standing and delivering and just being in presentation mode. So now we want them to use these guiding questions for think about planning for their school. So the questions, well, you have them in front of you. I don't think I need to read them to you, but basically having them to reflect on how that data impacts the practice in their particular building, and how will they use that data to plan forward for when they bring their teachers back. Yes?
Is there an opportunity at the beginning when we start talking about Val Ed? I know when Michael Brooks talks about Val Ed, he really presents it as not evaluating the principal, but evaluating the practices that take place in the school. And that shift has really got to be very clear to principals, because I think the perception,
About me.
it's about me. So how do we make sure that we are recrafting what this data is used for? And when he explained it, I got it, but it wasn't what I clearly, as a principal sitting in the school, thought it was.
So maybe in the talking points, maybe we, yes, Chair.
So I was thinking that on, I don't know what slide this is, but it talks about learning centered leadership.
18.
That will be the slide 18. Slide 18.
Gotcha.
The first bullet says leaders assessed on leadership behaviors linked to student learning. So maybe during the presentation, it's going to be very clear. I mean, the presenter needs to be clear in saying, so when we look at the first bullet, it talks about leadership behaviors. This is the way that we interact and we behave while we're doing the work. So
There's a major
It may-
misconception about
But I think that what you're advocating for also is to say that in the front.
Yes.
So at the beginning, in the talking points, we can add.
Almost what it's not and what it is.
Absolutely.
Because I think there's a huge misconception about it. And I don't think it's just my misconception.
You're right.
I think it's a principal's misconception. And the teachers. Yes.
Everybody.
It's not a misconception.
Jeff.
Right.
It's 4% of their evaluation.
Right, it is, that's what I was saying, the person said, it's not.
It is part of their
It's part of the
evaluation. It's
evaluation.
not.
It is, but I think what they're saying is to make the point that the driver is not that it's about me personally, but it is about how to improve my practice. So it's just like in data wise, we talk about you're looking at the learning and not the learner. So even though it is feedback on you and your practice to try to shift the mindset that it's not about whether or not you're good or bad, but how can you improve your practice. But it is connected to, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. So don't misrepresent it like it's not about you, because it is.
Right.
But by the same token, the lens that you should use that data for. So
And-
not take it personally, but take it professionally, if you will, is the best way I can kind of say it. What do you want to say, Jeff?
The example that he gave is just because you improve your practice is not going to make your score higher. You've got to improve your teacher's practice in order for the score to go higher, and obviously for you to be ultimately more effective. So you just can't change your own behavior. You have to change other people's behavior in order for that score to increase. That was kind of a,
And the same parallel made with student achievement thing, really.
Yes.
Do the student achievement thing.
yes. It
You
took,
change your practice to check that.
it was his.
There's a lot of Val-Ed that is about school climate and culture and performance of the school. But it's looked at through the lens of leadership.
Right.
So,
Scores will change when teachers understand the questions that they're reading and understand what they're answering a lot of things that they don't understand what they even mean.
Yeah, no,
so
Exactly.
we have to be careful with, because honestly, when teachers complete Val-Ed, they think it's about their performance.
Yeah, that's what they think.
They are evaluating the principal. So, maybe, I understand what you guys are, the point you're trying to make, it should be a reflective tool. But we don't want to send the message that's contrary to what the principal appraisal tool says, which is 4% of your evaluation. A third of it comes from you, a third of the 4% comes from your teachers, and a third comes from students.
So,
That's the quantitative.
but I think, even breaking that down to what that 4% is, I know we don't want to hit the evaluation tool, but when we're explaining that, I guess, my thought process, do we reach out to Michael Brooks and just ask him if you had to describe what Val-Ed is supposed to do, how would you, because I know the way that he explained it, and granted I cannot rephrase his words, but he really changed my thought process around it.
Val-Ed is supposed to evaluate the practices of the leader and the leadership team, the behaviors of the leadership team. It should be used as a professional development tool.
To change
To
practice.
change practice, it actually evaluates the leader and the leadership team and their behaviors and how their behaviors impact or not student performance and teacher capacity.
I have a question. Was there any consideration given to looking at the standards and where the 3 standards around instruction and where our principals fell around that, which is a bigger weight of their evaluation? Like, why did we choose Val-Ed and we never rolled Val-Ed right correctly? I'm just curious. Instead of looking at the standards that we rate them against that should build and increase student.
Probably because we have aggregate data about that.
And the valid data in our leadership tool that we use to evaluate principals have been crosswalked. So those two tools should align, and there are areas where those tools align.
I think an accurate way of describing valid is that it's a qualitative measure of your results. It's people's perceptions of results of leadership practice. That's what that is.
So we were just over here talking and conversing and looking at the makeup of the teams again to see where everybody will be placed. And so as David stated at the beginning, that this is an integrated approach to delivering this. So in the sessions, there's someone that is a specialist or expert in each of the rooms from OEP or somewhere. So we were just trying to see like where the people were. So Michael Brooks is at middle school, so we could reach out to see what the talking point team, because everybody will have the same, for that same portion, everybody will have that same slide. So we can reach out to him to see exactly what they're saying specifically in that portion. And I know like in the elementary, there's Lita Kelly, Mary Young. In the third group, we just noticed there's no one there. So I don't know if we need someone, we can actually look at that after. But we'll make sure whatever the talking points are that we will seek out from the experts, looking at Michael Brooks and the others to make sure those are specific around that. But we have documented all the notes from what you guys said.
Talking points and understanding, because I could read it and understand what you may bring for additional questions, so we just
Well,
make sure that.
but they would probably be speaking to it, like with the understanding and everything. So like if I was in a room, I wouldn't speak to it if I don't have the knowledge around the content. I would have fun. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And to make sure that they're uniform across all groups.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So then they'll have an opportunity to do some reflection. And so they'll review their performance data for teachers and leaders to identify behaviors necessary for change and growth to reach our systemic goal around literacy. And so there'll be several tools in their booklet that they'll use, and they'll have time to sit, reflect, talk with their teammates, do some planning. And this will be the end of session 1. We'll close with an evaluation. And then they will leave us, go to lunch, and then return back.
And have the items.
So when we get to part 2, it's making sense of student performance data. So when they return back to the room, we'll just briefly review what they did previously in part 1, looking at the FFT data for the teacher practice, looking at the valid data for leadership practice. And now, particularly in part 2, we're now bringing in student data. So we're going to look at all 3 data points, and we're going to develop and create a story at this time. So in part 2, the data that we are using, so if we can scroll down, I'll just share some of the student data that we're bringing in. We're going to continue the same protocol of using the data walk, so that principals will go around the class, around the room, and we look at district-wide data. And one of the slides here that we have actually the bookends where we have KRA, we have SAT, and in the middle we have PSAT, and we have PARC. And we all know that these are our indicators that we're using for the promise of PGCPS. So we will be showing kindergarten readiness assessment data, and we will show DRA data, SRI data. Did I miss anything else? Exactly. And so the slides that we have in there currently, we're going to actually work on that after you guys leave today, because we last week we saw some things that were missing from the data slides. We want them to be very clear so that when principals look at that, they don't have a lot of questions. So of course, when you're creating a data story, it needs to be a clear and compelling story. So your graphs that you're using need to be clear. So you can scroll through and see some of the graphs that we're going to be using. Yes, go right ahead. And this is, again, DRA data for kindergarten, and we did adjust this to give it X and Y axes. We gave it an N value. We did some, what else did we do, Charity, for change?
So we just changed it so that people can look at the percentages of kids in the different performance bands. We also wanted to make sure that principals could see the number of students that were tested from year to year, to have a conversation around that in the various grades. And we use numbers as well as percentages, so that people could be able to see the data from all avenues. Yes, sir.
I was going to ask, do you have a comparison to the state with this? Maybe a line that goes across to indicate where the state average is for KRA?
So,
Okay. This
so
is
this
DRA.
is for DRA.
I mean DRA.
So, we do not.
Do we have a state? Maybe I'm thinking of
Not
KRA. Maybe.
a state, it's a
Okay.
data number.
Maybe I'm thinking the kindergarten.
We're talking
KRA,
Yeah.
KRA there is.
There is a state.
So for KRA data, it
Before
was
we
suggested.
did DRA, there was one other slide that's not on here right now that we're tweaking. And it's the slide that shows the comparison from January data to May. And the reason why we thought that was so important is because approximately 80.
So, kids, if you, and many of you in this room have seen this DRA data before. The DRA data in January is much higher. You see kids at like 80 or 90% proficient, because at that point, kids are being viewed between the scale of a level 1 and a level 3. By the end of the year, each kindergarten kid has to be at a level 4, and it's 4. So they have to be at a level 4. However, in the various grades or various schools, we set the scale higher. At some schools, you may have 6 or 8, but it's countywide. The goal is, and the requirement is, a level 4. So that has happened for the last 2 years. So there's a slide that's being developed right now where you're going to see January's comparison, and then you will see May, because that's another different conversation around what is happening between January and May.
Or not happening.
Or not happening. That kids are going from 80% proficient to 56, and that's just an example. Not concrete, so don't go out and say 56. But it's just there is a drastic difference and drop in kindergarten, first grade, and second grade performance from January to May.
So this slide here is just the May performance
Yes,
from
this
year
just
to
shows
year.
May, and then there will be, and it's a slide that just shows May, and then apparently there is going to be another
Another
slide
one.
that will show May, and also show January before May, so that people can have that context.
So again, that's first grade DRA, second grade DRA. And then, as Ebony stated, we're going to show the comparison between May and January and May. So we have these 3 markers for those. And then we get to the SRI data where we have SRI for grades. We have all the grade levels for SRI. And it's the spring administration.
Was there ever a thought process in trying to do a slide with second grade DRA and SRI, because there's usually a huge discrepancy between a child that's being viewed as being on grade level with DRA, and then they take the SRI and they're functioning well below grade level according to the SRI. So wondering whether that's worthy of a conversation, because that's a huge, big idea.
There has been conversation about that, but the only reason why we did not show it as a data slide is because it's 2 different data sets having 2 different set of requirements. So DRA has different levels, and they're testing for different instruments.
Yeah.
So now what the thought is that the second grade data table will be by second grade's data table for SRI.
So that could be a part of the story.
Yep.
So when they look at that data side by side, that story should come out. We're not going to tell them what the story is, but that should be a part of the story that they see.
And then the next set of data, we will use KRA, that's the one I think you're referring to, Dr. Green. Do we have the state level for that, so that we can see where we performed as a district for demonstrating readiness and approaching. This slide actually was updated over the weekend because underneath what you'll see is each of the domains separately. And so from our last discussion last week, we wanted to see it side by side. So, and also when you're projecting all of these data slides around the room, it may just get a little overbearing for them. So we had it all put on one slide. So we'll take out the individual ones and just use that one if the team agrees to that today.
And then we'll see if we can add the line that you requested
For the state.
Dr. Green with the state average. We want to add that.
Which slide were you
That was
thinking? The
the
one
first.
that has all four?
Yes.
On this one, 55?
Yes.
Okay.
We could put it on there where the state
There could
performed
be a
at each
red line or
domain.
something on each domain.
Well, in this slide, I'm not quite sure how we do it because what you've done here,
Can you put the slide where we change the colors? It's hard to see and make those percentages in white. Do they look the same?
yeah. Do you need to indicate the delta, which is the not yet demonstrating, if you have the demonstrating?
I'm sorry, say that again.
I'm just looking at it, not to confuse with so much, but I'm wondering, do you need to put the delta, the not yet demonstrating? If you have 35% demonstrating language and literacy, wouldn't the inferred be the 65? Do you need that other?
So do we need it is what you're
Need
saying?
it, exactly. Because if you add a line to indicate what the state average is, it may be very confusing.
Okay.
Otherwise, if you feel that you need to put this in here, I don't want to make it so crowded and that
Exactly.
people will be confusing.
Exactly. So
If that's making sense.
yes. And after we've taken those when we come together, we can decide on the best for that. Thank you. Any questions about the data that we're using for the district data gallery walk in session 2?
For the kindergarten DRA, we can talk about the change in emergency expectations for the grade level at the end of the year.
We'll provide them some background.
Absolutely.
There's actually talking points that Simone was provided that were specific from CNI.
Okay. Just to put it, I mean, it looks like we made kids dumber last year. We actually raised the bar, so that should be part of the conversation.
So she actually crafted, they're not reflected here, but she crafted some talking points around here.
We made them less literate in kindergarten last year. We actually raised the expectancy.
I like that. So the next slide, so after they look at the district, after they look at the district's data, they're also going to be looking at their own student data, having that available to them as well. So everything that they see during the SLI, will look at the district, but in return they'll look at their own data, and then they start making connections and comparison. And yes,
Is that the same, maybe I missed, is that the same for the FFT day and the ballot? It's gonna be school specific as well?
yes, yes. So we school specific as well.
What I would suggest adding maybe to this slide so they can see the thinking, when you, in part 1, you have the header, now what, so what? So I'm wondering if you want to make it consistent, otherwise they may think it's a guiding question for the whole session again, kind of going back to.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And I was even looking ahead because on slide 62, there is a now what, so what? And so perhaps maybe adding that question to that slide. And just having that and having it all in the workbook. Exactly, thank you. And then that's when slide 61 they're actually digging into their data to make those links inside 61. And again, 62, we'll have that in the workbook, those questions, and we're going to go through today to pull out those questions and actually develop those worksheets. A quote from Dr. Maxwell on rigorous instruction, rigorous literacy instruction, reflection of part 2, and then again, the evaluation. And then at the conclusion of part 2, we will not see them again until day 3 in the afternoon. And so when they come back to part 3, helping them make those connections to the previous work that they did, and now moving into putting it all together and crafting and communicating. What was that title again, Sharon? I'm sorry. Crafting and communicating my literacy vision. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I'm just curious in terms of the flow of the thinking. You have Dr. Maxwell's quote here toward the end. I'm wondering if we need to bring it up a little, maybe to begin this part 2 with this thinking.
Slide 63.
Slide 63. And without knowing the flow of the talking points, if the flow fits better there, but to think about.
So we're going to talk through the literacy part, and I'm actually going to be very transparent and say it is still a work in progress, because the literacy part is really C&I, and we don't have a representative here today. And so we are going to be meeting with Simone, who's the member, this afternoon to finish crafting it. But I'm going to take you to the agenda, which is slide 69. We go to the agenda. So within this 2-hour session, we're going to actually talk about what does literacy look like, what will be my literacy vision, and then how does my data watch journey align to rigorous literacy instruction. So at this point now, this is where principals will put everything together and discuss what literacy looks like, particularly for elementary school, looking at the rigorous literacy plan and what those strategies look like and what I should be doing in my building, and connecting it to my vision for my school, and then making that link to the data watch journey. Some of the information that's already included in here, again, looking at those 2 leadership standards on slide 70, looking at standard 2 and standard 3. Standard 2, looking at the instructional achievement goals, pedagogical practices, and research-based instructional practices, and then monitoring that. And then all of this really was deliberate because of the valid data, what the valid data said. The valid data said that we were 3.6 to 3.65 in planning and monitoring, okay? And implementing was 3.6 as well, but we really want to focus on planning. What does it look like? How do I plan for this? And then once I plan for it, how do I monitor what's taking place in the school? Okay. And then again, looking at the culture, looking at the theory of change and emphasizing the literacy within the culture of change, and that it's a focus with a lens on literacy. And then going back again to those bookends, examining different tasks, what it will look like, how they're different, what's expected of kids, what type of literacy skills. Right here. If it's a chime in, please feel like you should say it right there. What literacy skills are needed to take these different type of assessments. And we're going to actually look at an SAT or possibly PS or another. We're going to look at an actual prompt from an SAT, and we're going to have some discussion around what literacy skills are needed for students to take that assessment. You keep scrolling, Sharon. Again, looking at college and career readiness, and going back to our Prince George's County Public School definition and how we define literacy, and looking at how it's defined with College and Career National Board, talking about the importance of it. And we circle speaking and listening here because one of the strategies within the literacy plan for elementary focus on speaking, listening, and reasoning. And so that's one of the strategies for the rigorous literacy instruction. And so that's why they're going to speak and focus to speaking and listening.
It's a great point to look at, going back to the data rate,
Another reason why.
The prior care proficiency and care rate, disaggregated by prior care.
Yes.
Because one of the things that, when you look at the systemic data for prior care, our pre-K wasn't really all that high in the KRA data. So that'd be a great point of looking back at the KRA data. You did a little slide just based on prior care, bar graph.
And again, a snapshot of the strategies that we're using for literacy. I think she inserted some other things this week. You can keep going, Sharon.
She was adding.
Yeah, she's adding some things and it's updated since this weekend actually. And doing a learning test with a partner, looking at some things and what is the objective.
I think you see page numbers there
Yes.
because
That would be the snapshot of the
rigorous literacy plan, everyone will have a copy of that. So you see the page numbers, it's referring actually to that document.
to the snapshot, so they won't receive the entire document. It will be the modified snapshot of it.
Again, that's just parts of components of the plan. Keep going. And then again, looking at that reflection piece of how this will help me in my school leadership in 2015 and impact my work. And then again, all the work that they're going to be doing during that time of individual planning and will be in the workbook and we'll refer them to those workbook pages. We'll have your literacy group vision, your team, and then some calendar and next steps. Because we actually kind of when we first started the presentations, we actually overdid our presentations. So some of the stuff that was in the beginning work of the presentation will now be some next steps for professional development.
And then some of the principals that were on the initial feedback team had some requests that they wanted SLI to consider when crafting the presentation. And so to also let them know that those things had not been forgotten. So they may be embedded in the September or October principals meeting, or they may be courses that will be available through OTB. And so there will be a list of those things so that they understand that that is in the forefront. It was just too much for SLI. So they asked about, they wanted some PD around guided reading.
Small group instruction.
Yeah.
It was one other thing. And then as far as the implementing, monitoring, and planning, Dr. Davis was like, it was over advantageous to try to cover all of that information during SLI. So for example, we're really focusing now on planning. So in September, it will probably be implementing and monitoring. So just scaling back so it's not overwhelming and they really have an opportunity to think about what that's gonna look like, sound like, feel like in their building.
And when we did the original planning as well, Brian, we really went deep with speaking, listening, reading, reasoning. And so that's really another big piece that we took out as well.
So there was modeling of strategies, and it was just way too much for 2-hour sessions. And so how can we be more strategic moving forward to ensure that we're continuing to integrate the presentations from month to month as well? So what we couldn't do in SLI, there will be a plan for what that will look like moving forward during the school year.
Any other questions? And then again, reflection, making those connections, because the focus of the two focus from the coherent framework, academic excellence, and high-performing workforce. And so again, asking them what do they need to promote both of those focus in their school. Upcoming dates and trainings again, and that's what Ebony was just referring to. Work time, and at this time looking at the literacy plan, preparing for that pre-service week, and Moto site, and the reflection of that session and evaluation. So that's the gist of the 6 hours that will occur. And again, after you guys depart, we're going to continue to work on it so that on Wednesday when we come together, there could be put a quotation around final, so that you can have that so you can start looking at it and determining your teams who's actually going to be facilitating what during what times, and then also get a clear understanding of you kind of. I want to say, Joren's, that location, Pam put CEO conference room
For Wednesday?
for Wednesday.
Okay.
I don't know what that looks like. but she sent it out. It said CEO conference room. I don't know if that's everybody or just elementary. I have to read that email.
Has everybody here?
Okay, okay. Any questions before we actually conclude? It's 10:25 and we've captured some next steps and then we'll just do our plus deltas and then we're finished for today.
So just one thought, that they piggybacking on the what you were saying, certainly is too much to get all that to some leadership institute, but I'm seeing references to building your literacy plan for your school, but there are no references to what's wrong with construction, curriculum instruction on maps, data that's already in place, tools that principals, especially fewer principals, might use as the building blocks for the literacy plan for their schools. I just wonder if those could somehow be listed while they wouldn't be obviously thoroughly discussed, but giving principals at least some building blocks to choose from so that they're aware that these some don't really know if those documents even exist.
Or site links.
Or a site with links to it. Site with links. So that they're not just
Primary, I think it's the primary or something.
Yes, like that. So that they're not just kind of picking and choosing anything that they think is a good idea.
Also, when you give them a shell of their first week, so like normally we say they have to cover the following things, or can, they normally just like move through their lives and then like we're going to give them.
So for the pre-service week plan, what they need to do during that week?
Right.
I don't know, Sharon, do you have any input or comments around
I
that?
think also part of the rigorous literacy, maybe, Brian, this would speak to your question. The professional development lead teachers have gone through training a couple of weeks ago around rigorous literacy. And I think as part of that pre-service week, they may also have an opportunity to work along with the teachers. And,
Yes, I didn't understand that.
Yes.
But it looks like on the slide that we're giving them working time and talking time to develop their literacy plan
Okay.
without giving them access to documents that they might need to build that plan. I'm just,
No,
so that their work is efficient, so they're not spending time
Just
developing
idle
a
time.
plan.
Understood.
And then getting back to school and their reading specialist or PDLT says, oh, by the way, I went to a training and this is where we're supposed to be going. Just to make their work more efficient.
Whatever those.
So we can
thinking,
definitely do that.
like the slide that had some of the things she had on there, and the literacy plan was K through 2, guided reading, and then 3 to 5 is balanced literacy, I think, and then perhaps having that template or shell, having that and maybe putting those links there where to get those resources. So that's something we can develop for that workbook and everything. Any other questions?
Yeah, an appendix in the workbook would be great with a list of system resources.
Any other questions or thoughts? Good, all right.
As this is, I know you mentioned that this product line is going to be continuously updated, which of course we understand. Will it be shared with us?
The whole
Yeah.
sheet, yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Because when I tried to access it a while ago, it said permission denied. Is there something
We'll
I
make
need
sure
to
we'll
know?
make
Is
sure.
there something I need to know?
What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that access?
1028.
We'll make sure it's shared.
Subtle message there,
Can you step outside?
We'll just fix that.
Share it with everyone here. Okay, so we have our next steps, and again, Wednesday, those that can come will be at the conference room at 12:30, and then we'll break off into our individual routines, and we can go from there. All right, plus deltas, what worked well, and what we will need to change for the next time.
Just have a question or clarification. Back during the 12
Okay.
slides, on slide 8
Slide 8.
here. And in slide 8, it has both the coherent framework and the other graph, but in the notes it talked about, I know there was some discussion around whether or not just the coherent framework
Yes.
slide, and just,
So
I don't know if
we're
this is
still
still,
We're
okay.
still waiting for clarification, because we are still warning just for the coherence framework slide. because the coherence framework really captures everything and speaks to what is taking place. And then we're talking about maybe having arrows come in and point to those two focus areas. So we're still waiting to see if we're gonna change it or not.
Okay.
So by Wednesday, whatever version we have, that'll probably be something.
And likewise for slide 9, to Dr. Green.
Yes.
Because data-wise is on the outer ring of the coherence framework.
I
so
saw
there's
that,
not really a
yeah.
need for that, but we have to wait for final decision on that.
Okay.
Any plus deltas? Yes.
Like, whether they be elementary, I assume all of them.
So we can ask Pam about that.
Yes.
I'll make a note.
So when I talked to Barbara about how to break up the elementary program, Dr. Davis gave some suggestions about how to cluster the elementary principals together. Some of it based on need and some of it based on all the ECCs to be in one room, so there would be some collaboration. And charter schools, so there would be some collaboration. So they're in the we're in the process of trying to do some job-alike groups so that when there is time, work time, and also time to look at data, there are some opportunities for meaningful collaboration.
Yeah, that was one of David's
Yes.
questions before he left, so yeah,
Yep.
Right. Okay, thank you again, everyone, and, and if you have any, just check them in, we'll see where it's at 12:30. Okay, you're welcome, thank you.
Got it.